Good morning, it's Ryan with Love the Work. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Favorite Artist and Album. Make sure you follow us on Spotify. We got a lot of new music coming out in 2023. Want to make sure you guys are here to hear it. So let's jump in. I'm going to use my phone actually. Let's see. No Heroes, Converge. Converge comes up so much. I don't know if I just have a shitload on my phone or if there's some resonance that I can't avoid Converge. I don't listen to him. I've talked to him probably 10 times, talked about him 10 times on the show. And I can't tell you the last time I listened to him. But I'm going to skip Converge today. Lonely Brad Holyoke. That's a little more like it. It's a little more my speed. Brad is my dear friend and fellow songwriter. This song's called Lonely.
When you wake up feeling lonely, when you wake up feeling blue, when you wake up in the
Brad is definitely one of my favorite artists. That's a perfect pick for a favorite album and artist. We started working together in 99, 2000. Saw him play at the Battle of the Bands. At the time, I was in the high school jazz band and played guitar. And I saw him playing in a trio with oh my God, what's his name? Ryan something on drums, I can almost remember his name, and Mark Barnett on, must have been bass, and Brad played guitar. But they sang like blues rock tunes, probably Black Crowes. I know Brad was way into Black Crowes. But just to see him, a high school guy, playing guitar, playing lead guitar, I was just like blown away. I mean, I thought I was hot shit in high school for sure. And, you know, I played pretty well. I was in the jazz band, you know, so I won that audition or whatever. So I thought I was pretty hot shit. But man, when I saw Brad play guitar, I was just humbled. I mean, I remember I walked up and like kissed his boots. Literally, he's on stage and I'm sure he's like, who is this fucking guy? But later he recalls that he like hated me at that point. I like dressed pretty funny, like wore the what kind of hat do you call it? Like dressed like it was the 30s and 40s. I was way into jazz, had the suspenders, pleated pants, wingtip shoes, you know, dressed like it was the 40s. You know, I was a swing kid. And he hated me. He's like, I hated you. But later, you know, we became friends probably through Matt Erickson, and started writing songs together. Wrote Sip, Sigh, and Drag, a couple others, and it just really clicked when we started to write together. We had a lot of the same influences, and we thought the same about music. You know, we were both fascinated in the same ways with chords and rhythms and what you could do. And, you know, when you're a teenager, when you're writing songs, you're writing about girls, you're writing about heartache, you know, and that was something we both had in common. I'm sure everybody at that age has in common, but something we really connected over and wrote a lot of cool songs. And, you know, when you're writing songs and you're a youngster like that, you're just so fascinated by it. I mean, I still am with music, but it's such an overpowering experience when you create this thing and you're like, this is good. I mean, you know, this is cool. Like somebody would actually like this, and our friends did like it, you know. and people dug it. And so it was such a formative experience in those early days to write songs with Brad and also Matt and Casey. We're learning guitar, we're learning, No Doubt songs and Nirvana songs and Sublime especially, and Rage Against the Machine, Soundgarden, learning all these songs. And at the same time, we're writing songs too. We're seeing what they're doing. Say, oh, they play this note in the scale. It's a minor scale, but they also play this note. And seeing what they're doing with chords and vocal harmonies and arrangements, and just growing and growing together in that songwriting fellowship, was so formative. I mean, I'm here, 20 years later, 24 years later, completely obsessed with it, as into it as I have ever been, and just trying to go deeper, just trying to free up the time and the resources to spend more time and go deep into these things. So fascinating. So yeah, a little bit about Brad. Let's see, The Blacks. This is one that Brad recommended to me. I bet I listened to it once. I couldn't tell you a lick on the record. Rat-a-tat. I think my friend Eric Rosales told me about these guys, and this knocked me out when I heard it. I should listen to it again. I haven't listened to it in forever, but I don't know if it's one guy. I don't know if it's a couple of producers, but it's electronic music. But I know they use real guitars. And I might look up some tutorials on how they got their sound, because there's a couple songs where I don't know how they got that guitar sound. It's so juicy. Like, I think the first time I started calling guitars juicy was listening to Rat-a-tat. I mean, they just jump out. They're just so wet and greasy and beautiful. I'm going to take a screenshot because I want to go back and dive into that and see if somebody broke down how they got that guitar sound. But it's so lovely. Let me see what else I got. Brad Holyoke P. This is another one off Bikini and Cowboy. Oh, this is a good ass song. He has two versions of it on this record.
Got a funny feeling like there's something that I missed. No matter how I try, I always feel like piss. Not to say that I've been feeling wet or warm, I guess. A little more like urine on the rocks. And I just keep on praying that I don't get flushed away. I just like to think that I could make it through the day without having to take these goddamn pills I have to take to make me feel okay.
Great song. How can you beat that? How can you argue with that? The sentiment is there. Drums, 422-22. Wonder what the hell that is. Oh, I think it's a riff. I want to listen to that, actually. Come along with me. If it is what I think it is.
Fuck you.
It's not. It's Matt.
Gosh darn it. Fuck you.
I forgot I had this. I have to make some shit with this. fucking 2 takes of drums layered on top of each other. I love that bass drum. I hate those hi-hats. Have to do something with this. I did one song called Beginner's Luck, but I just took a certain chunk of this and looped it. Break it down. Oh my god. Yeah, Matt's the other main member of the band. I've been trying to put the band back together since we broke up in like 2003. We broke up and all kind of went our separate ways. I mean, it was just kind of like we were just becoming adults. We were fresh out of high school. We were only a band for a couple of months or a couple of years. And everybody started getting friends and jobs and girlfriends and kids. And, eventually 2003, 2004, I moved to Los Angeles. And probably we stayed in contact, but I want to say, I guess maybe 10 years after the fact. No, less than that. I was always kind of reaching out to the guys and trying to get them to collaborate. It was a little more difficult in those days, but still, all the digital technology was still there. We were all still connected. But in probably 2014, 15, I started talking with Matt more regularly, and we started collaborating more regularly. And probably it wasn't that early actually, but I started recording a bunch of songs in like around 2015, and doing basically one per week and sharing them with Matt over text. And I think I would ask him to record something on there. And it's interesting with Matt because he always has a very different perspective from what I have. Like whenever he comes up with something, I'm always blindsided. Like I never would have thought of that. Like he sees everything differently than I do. It's opposite of me and Brad. We think very similarly and we come up with similar ideas. When Matt comes up with an idea, I was like, what? It's from a different universe than the one I operate in. But he contributed a lot to the songs that became Rainbow Grass. He'd bring guitar parts and keyboard parts and I think bass maybe even. And at that point, my vision was starting to kind of take shape of what I wanted to do with the band. And I don't know specifically what it was, but I know that it was basically, hey, I want to make a lot of records. I want to figure out some way to make this a business, right? I want to figure out some way to make this band profitable so that we can make music full time. We can work on music full time. We don't have to, work jobs which take up all your time. And he's like, Erickson's in. He's like, I'm in. Brad could never really commit. He had a hard situation and he really wanted to do it, but he could never really commit. And Casey, he didn't want to do it. He doesn't play music, and if he wants to deep down, maybe that's one thing, but overtly he doesn't want to do it. So Matt and I were like, all right, let's go. So we would FaceTime every Sunday, talk for an hour, and constantly collaborate on music. And we were each writing a song per week at that point. And we wound up with 100 songs, 150, 200 songs. And we decided it was time to make a record. So we just started picking out the favorites. And it's this album cover you just saw. And and we just started picking out the favorites, and then we started narrowing it down even further to ones that we thought went well together and would fit on the record, and started to record them. I mean, I had a studio I was renting, a rehearsal studio, and when I moved to Tahunga, I dropped the studio and I had drums in my garage here where I rent a room, and was able to record drums here, which was very lucky. It's a very small room, so it's very dry and close, the drum sound, but it's real drums, and so most of the drums you hear on Love the Work self-titled is recorded there, and then we recorded everything else just in our rooms, and layered it all up. That became Love the Work. And then after that we made Jazz Odyssey. I did a little bit more recording at work. I work at a rehearsal studio, so I was able to use those studios. So some of the drums, I guess maybe not the drums, but some of the guitars have a bit of a bigger sound. Actually, I want to not so much show you something as and listen to something. It's the guitars on Jazz Odyssey. I recorded in one of the studios, and I was telling my friend David about it yesterday, and I was like, it made me want to listen to it again. So that's what I'm going to do. Hella fun. That's Stone off of Jazz Odyssey. God, that's fun. But so we recorded Jazz Odyssey, and Matt's taking a bit of a break right now, much to my chagrin. I'm very sad, but just pressing forward. Sometimes when something happens, we think of it as a negative. There's a silver lining. I've had situations happen that inspired me to try new things and expand new things. I had situations happen where now it gave me the idea to do the jazz broadcast. So, and that was a positive. It was a negative that turned into a positive. And now I really value that jazz broadcast. Every Saturday I look forward to it. It's this venue where I can grow as not only a jazz soloist, but just as a jazz musician. I'm not a jazz musician, but to grow as a jazz musician, grow and learn that language is something that I value very much. And so now I have this venue that a negative situation helped to create for me. So I'm really thankful for that. But, speaking of Matt, he doesn't want to work right now. So, it made me start to ask questions. Well, how can I stay productive? What do I want to do? Because I don't want to make solo music. I've never really been too much into that. I always want to collaborate, and everything we make as a collaboration is so much better than, in my opinion, what any one of us does solo. So, but if I'm forced into that situation, it is what it is. I'm going to try to make the best of it. So, I made a release schedule a couple weeks ago to lead up to the album that I've been working on. So now I have 10 songs I'm looking forward to releasing every 6 weeks. So now I'm super excited, but also hyper-focused because, I can focus on just one song or a couple songs. And with that deadline ahead of me, I've got to really focus on it and make it happen. And it's very exciting. Brad's a little more into, I think, helping with that. And we're talking about doing a split single in April. He's got an original, I've got an original song. And the songs, I've got lo-fi tapes coming out in March. 3 songs I did on tape. And I recently added drums and bass last week actually. And I'm really trying to get him to play lead guitar on one song and sing on one. It's lo-fi tapes, so it's kind of this excuse to do it lo-fi. I mean, it began lo-fi, it's on tape. But also it's an encouragement. It lowers that barrier to entry. So I'm telling Brad, hey, record it on your cell phone. If I just need a vocal harmony, it's like, if the recording quality is not that great, that's fine, because he doesn't have a lot of great equipment right now. So I'm like, hey, just record it on your cell phone, just record it on Spire, and let's use this to get the ball rolling. So yeah, that was that. Let's see what else we got. Just tell me it's not Converge again. Deftones I was way into right when I moved to Los Angeles. My friend Chooch kind of turned me on to them. He was way into them. And I love the 7-string guitar, 8-string guitar sound. Super heavy riffs. And I love that sound. It really vibed with me because it has a heavy riff sound, but it also has a basic song structure. Any of these songs I feel like could also be acoustic songs or blues songs. And that's something that really appeals to me because that's a basic structure that we use a lot in our writing. And, you just add heavy guitars and now it's a new thing. Now it's its own thing, even though it's, if you strip it down, you could say it's a blues song or it's just a straight rock song. But I love that heavy guitar element. And you see it a lot more now, 20 years after the 7-string guitar becomes popular. So many guys are carrying that flag and exploring that instrument and that range. You've got digital amps now that give you so much more clarity in that low range. Mixing techniques that allow you to have more clarity in that range. And there's a lot of amazing bands doing amazing shit in that range. Similar to the Deftones band called Loathe. You'll see me rock their t-shirt now and then. Man, when I heard that record, I was just floored because they're doing all the things. They're doing a lot of the things that I wanted to do musically. And I couldn't get the sound right. I couldn't get those elements to work together. And it was a technical shortcoming, but it was also a shortcoming of my own skills. I didn't have the skills as a songwriter and producer to make that happen. And so to hear them do it was very encouraging. It was so exciting, and still is so exciting to see what can be done. They do it with snippets of music. I love the idea of a theme or a motif that's played just once instead of being repeated, or even a variation of it. It's like it's played once and it stands alone. And it's all these kind of small moments of music. You'll hear guys do it. Steely Dan will do that sometimes. A solo is that, it's this singular moment that doesn't repeat. This phrase that they play as a soloist doesn't repeat. It's just that one time, and it makes it special, especially if it is an interesting phrase, an engaging phrase. So you can do that with any musical idea, even if it's not a solo. And it's something they really rock on that. But so yeah, Deftones, huge influence for sure. Trouble No More, the Allman Brothers Band. I love the major pentatonic sound of Allman Brothers. The more I'm learning Charlie Parker licks, the more I realize that it's not this special thing that I think it is. Like, I always said, I want to learn how to play like Charlie Parker. I want to be the only guy who plays Charlie Parker licks, right? And so as I'm learning them, I'm realizing that he played a lot of major pentatonic shit. And that's kind of a big part of his sound, major pentatonic shit and chromatic lines, which is like Grateful Dead. It's Southern rock. It's Allman Brothers, and which is bittersweet for me because I grew up on all that shit and I love that shit. Skynyrd and all these bands, Molly Hatchet. Yeah, I love that guitar style. And I guess no duh, because they're playing Charlie Parker licks. They're playing major pentatonic licks. They're using chromaticism to connect these ideas. And so it's something unconsciously I've learned to do, because that's a big part of my vocabulary is the major pentatonic and especially minor pentatonic. But to see now that I'm diving into Charlie Parker that that's what he's doing is exciting, because I already have all that kind of built in, but I'm excited to dive a little deeper and learn how he phrases it. What notes does he land on? Because a lot of these guys are using the ones, whereas Charlie Parker is going to start on an extension. He might start on a 3 or a 5 or a 7 even, and use these higher extensions of the chords. So I'm excited to dive into what he does with that and how he does it. I've committed to learning a lick per week for the next year. It's early in the year, obviously it's January now, and I'm excited about that because learning licks is such a great way to build your vocabulary as a soloist. And the more, now that I'm doing jazz broadcasts every week, it makes me realize that I just play a lot of the same shit. And so I don't want to be too repetitive in my playing. So seeing that and being faced with that, it's making me say, okay, I need to spice it up. I need some variety. I need some range. And so committing to learning a lick per week is really exciting for that. Now, if all I did was learn Charlie Parker licks for a year, I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world, to be honest. There's lots of players I love: Jim Hall, Sonny Rollins, Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, and I will certainly learn some of their stuff. But this morning I was on my computer, was updating its software. I was like just learning a couple Charlie Parker licks, and I could just do that all day. So I'm so excited for that, and that's one of the things I love about Allman Brothers Band, is that major pentatonic language that they speak so fluently. In my life, the Beatles, hell yeah. I wonder how much the Beatles play Charlie Parker licks. Excuse me, I'm not used to rambling on so long. Drying out my throat. But the Beatles I've talked about at length. They're a band that I definitely model our band after, in the fact that each guy in the band sings and also writes songs. And that's, I think, one of our real strengths in Love the Work, is we all sing and write our own songs. The level of influence that the Beatles had, I don't want to say we'd ever attain that level of influence. It was kind of a singular thing that the Beatles did, but still, that definitely set a high bar, and one that I'm, excited to try to work within. Them Crooked Vultures. I remember being excited when this came out just because it was John Paul Jones, bass player from Led Zeppelin. He's playing with Josh Homme. He's playing with Dave Grohl. I can't remember if there was anybody else in the band, but those were the heavy hitters. And I remember listening to the record, and I think I had to force myself to listen to it because it wasn't doing it for me. You know, it was I didn't dig it. You know, I didn't dig it. Mayday Tomahawk. This is a crazy record. Mike Patton. He plays with some other name guys. I can't think of who they are because I don't know the scene. It might be Pepper Keenan on guitar, but killer, super creative guy. Mike Patton. Mother Love Bone. Captain High Top. I think this was Eddie Vedder. Chris Cornell. I try to zoom in on this photo. I think that's Eddie Vedder. Chris Cornell. Is that the right band? Am I thinking the right band? Are these the guys who did Hunger Strike? Answer in the comments. Willis, that's our group. Blur, Bank Holiday. I like the way this guy writes songs. There's a certain element that's there of just kind of making it up that I really like and relate to as a songwriter. Of just kind of picking something and going with it, because that's something that I do and kind of rely on as a songwriter, is you kind of just do something and then commit to it. You just roll with it. And I get a sense of that in his music. It's hard for me to put my finger on, but definitely an awesome artist, though. Whatever his name is, I don't know. Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. This shit's sick, man. Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum is so sick. This is a band that's extremely unique. I know my friend Briar showed me them. It's heavy, but it's also like theatrical. So it's super prog. It's art rock. It's like beyond prog. And it's so like brainy. They're like elite level Berkeley musicians and somehow make this rock music that's I don't want to say palatable, but it rocks. But it's so unique, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard, you know. And the recording quality is so good. The fidelity is so good. Everything you hear just sounds so amazing. Like, you know, it doesn't sound like a Soundgarden record or a Nirvana record and I don't know how to describe it. Everything's so impactful, but you can hear the room, you can hear the ambience, and really amazing sounding music. I think Dan Rathbun, the bass player, did a lot of the engineering and recording, and the bass sounds amazing, you know. I don't know how he did it, to be honest, but super good. Mozart, Elliott Smith, Ballad of Big Nothing. I always talk about Elliott Smith. Man, he's one that he's just such a strong songwriter, such a good singer. He uses melody to such strong effect, and is a great guitar player too. He creates these situations that I don't know how to describe, but it's definitely something that it's like, I don't know how I would copy an Elliott Smith song. If you told me to go write an Elliott Smith, something in his style, I don't know exactly what I would do, but I know that sometimes when we write something, will go, oh, that sounds like Elliott Smith, you know, and I don't know what those elements are exactly. It might be, to me, it struck me that he had a lot of movement in his songs. It's always moving. You know, he didn't strike me as the guy who was just hang on one chord for a while and go to the next chord and hang there for a while, or even just go between two chords. It seems to me like there's always a lot of chords, there's always a lot of movement. And even if it's not a lot of chords in terms of like, you know, more than 4 chords in a song, he might play a variation of the chord where the root is in a different note. So maybe he would play the 3rd in the bass, or he would play a 5th in the bass, or maybe chromatically walk from one chord to the next. And that creates such a sense of movement, and it gives a progression of the real strength. The Beatles were great at that. Excuse me, Beach Boys, Elton John, who's the one I was just going to say? Oh, Squeeze. They all do that, and it's like instant good music to do that as a songwriter. And it's something I did with a song called Brian Wilson, and I called it Brian Wilson because of that chord movement, something that Elton John spoke about, saying, oh, Brian Wilson's the first guy I heard who would play a 3rd in the bass instead of the root. You know, it's like the greatest songwriting hack of all time is using that bass movement in the bass. But it's something I have not strived to do as a songwriter, except on a few occasions, like with Brian Wilson, for example, and only a couple songs I've ever tried to do that. And even though it's like a songwriting hack, it's never been my method. I'm just the guy who just strums a chord, and when I go to A minor, well, that's the chord I'm strumming, you know, and A is in the bass. But I'll have to explore that more. I am. Wait, I was going to say I'm not doing the song of the week, but I suppose I am, and that reminds me, I've been so busy, I've literally forgot about it. Just going to look and see where I'm at. 1-1. So I'm only a couple days behind. But I guess now that I am doing the song of the week, it's so funny I could forget something like that. But that's something I should strive to do, actually, is do that bass movement. I could even commit to like doing that for a year. I've read a bunch of fucking great songs. I might do that. We'll see. Bride Holyoke. Oh, sick. I want to listen to this. This is Brad, something he recorded with John Bean back in the day.
I don't feel quite right today. There's someplace I should be. I feel too much like me today. I try so hard to leave, but I can't get out the door. come around today, but no one's gone away. I sit and count the hours and kill another day, and waste away some more. A total waste of oxygen. I can't get out the door. Can't get out the door. I try so hard to leave. I try so hard to get somewhere. I try so hard to leave. I try so hard. I try so hard. I try so
There's a guy who reached out to me. This reminds me. Guy who reached out to me and said, "Hey, I don't know if this would work for your show, but thought maybe you could give it a listen." And it's so funny because you know, I mean, this show I just talk about our band, but this guy is like, "Hey, maybe you can play this on the show." So I do actually want to play it for you, just because he reached out. It's called Zany Waterstoat. Let me show you this. How do I do this? So thank you for reaching out. Gloomorish. I like that guitar.
Show tomorrow, shine together.
Cool. Zany Waterstoat. Thank you so much for sending that. That's super cool. I love the guitars. Reminds me of cool stuff. Who's the band? Hella. But that's super fun. Thank you so much for sending that. Let's see what else we got here. Yellow Submarine Beatles. Hell yeah. Great song. What does that remind me of? I can't think. Radiohead, Pablo Honey. Oh my god, have I never pulled Radiohead yet? Radiohead is probably the single biggest influence for us. It's the one that we all agreed on wholeheartedly. When we started playing together in 99, 2000, everybody was listening to OK Computer. And if you haven't heard that record, just go listen to it. Doesn't matter what kind of music you like, listen to OK Computer. It's like greatest record of all time. But had this unique sound, futuristic, but it was rooted, which I didn't realize at the time, but it was rooted in such strong basic songwriting. I don't want to say basic, but fundamentally strong songwriting. You know, stuff like Karma Police, which uses that bass movement I was just talking about. I mean, it's just the perfect example of that working so well, you know. And you can dress it up any way you want. You can put futuristic bleeps and bloops on the top of it, but at the end of the day, it's that strong song. It's got that bass movement that makes it a strong song. I'm writing a song right now, and I'm kind of at a stuck point right now where I don't know what to do with this one section. And I think what I'm gonna do is try to use that technique to get me out of this stuck spot. Blue skies on Mars, that gives me an idea. No more flying cars, the wealth is in here. The profit has spoken, he's streaming on Twitch. He has the best weapons, including your bitch. And then it goes someplace, and I've got some different ideas. But I think what I'm going to do is take what I have, and then, you know, I've got these couple of chords that Brad and I worked out. But I need to write something that's got a bass movement to it. Something like that, if not exactly that. And because it's got that movement, it's got that direction that people need in music. It's got that emotion. It's got motion. I think there's a real connection between emotion and motion, which is what these bass-driven elements communicate. But Radiohead, man, I hated Radiohead because when I was a teenager, my girlfriend at the time loved them, and the fragile male ego, anything that they love takes that love away from me, and so I hated them at the time, which is so funny because that was this record. That was Pablo Honey. I had to go back to Pablo Honey once I had fallen in love with OK Computer. I eventually went back to Pablo Honey and listened to the bands, and great records, but they're just such a strong band, and that's another band that I really looked up to and modeled ourselves after. In terms of like everybody in the band is such a strong contributor. There's nobody who's phoning it in with Radiohead. The bass is so strong. The drums are so excellent. The vocals are second to none. Johnny Greenwood is this icon. He's his own thing. Johnny Greenwood is like an archetype almost. Ed O'Brien, they were all such strong players in the band, and that's something that I wanted to model our band after was Radiohead. And it's one that we all love. Casey, Brad, Matt. I mean, we just freaking love that band. They're the greatest for sure. Mozart, Benny Golson, Jazz Tat, Art Farmer, Killer Joe. If ever there was a jazz single. Super great record, great sound. Curtis Fuller on trombone. I love Curtis Fuller. McCoy Tyner played piano. Wow. I've listened to this record not a ton of times, but I've had it now for a couple of years, and I really like it. It's such a departure from what I grew up listening to, which was Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, John Coltrane, Dexter Gordon, Sonny Rollins especially. This, it almost sounds a lot more polished. I mean, look, these guys are all there wearing matching suits. Get that fucking light in the way. They're all there wearing matching suits in the studio, looking sharp, clean haircuts. And to me, the jazz I was listening to seemed a little more rough and ready, a little more off the cuff. I think there was a producer with a heavy hand on these sessions, it almost sounds like, which is to a benefit. I mean, the solos are tight, the songs are tight, the arrangements are very cool. I probably could play some of this and get away with it. But super cool record. Meet the Jazz Tat, Art Farmer and Benny Golson. Super cool record. Definitely check it out. Radiohead again. How cool. It's Pablo Honey again. Hello Jesus, Brad Holig. I played that yesterday. Small Cigar, Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull, one of my favorite bands. Me and Casey way into Jethro Tull. I think Matt liked him too. I don't know if Brad does. Probably has respect for him, certainly. Maybe he does. But excellent band, which is but it's so much built on Ian Anderson as a personality and as a songwriter. I mean, certainly Martin Barr is a fantastic player, and all the guys in the band are fantastic players, but it doesn't seem like it's their band. It seems like it's Ian's band. He writes the music. He okays the arrangements if he doesn't write them himself. And big influence on my sound for sure, especially growing up as an acoustic player. A lot of that 6/8, a lot of that waltzy type of stuff. When we wrote pleasure menu together. Not playing it well, but a lot of movement, and that's the thing I've been talking about a lot today. A lot of movement in the bass, a lot of motion, and was something he was really good with on the guitar. I imagine it made writing good bass lines pretty easy because you're just kind of tracking what he's doing. You're just amplifying what Ian is doing on the guitar. Knocked Loose, hell yeah. Isaac showed me this band. Blood Will Have Blood is the song. Knocked Loose, Laugh Tracks is the record. I love it because it's so heavy and it's so just ragged. Like his voice screams, it just sounds like it's coming apart. It just sounds like his voice is coming apart, and it immediately gets under your skin. It's something that I can see a lot of people not liking, but I definitely dig it. I haven't listened to it in a while. I might listen to it today. But the guitars are so heavy. My friend Rob told me that, I've mentioned before in those low registers on the guitar, it's hard to get clarity, especially in bass. If you tune below an E or a D on bass, it's hard to get impact. It's hard to get clarity. But Rob told me they tune all the way to A flat with this band. He told me they used like a piano to get clarity in those notes, and I was like, oh, that's smart. I can't hear it, but you can feel it in the music. There's there's impact in those notes. Nice. Jamie Abersold. Got to give props to Jamie Abersold. This is Countdown to Giant Steps, a book I need to work with more. It takes Giant Steps, which is a very complex jazz progression, and breaks it into kind of manageable chunks. You'll look at 2 or 3 chords at a time and little phrases, and helps you get them under your fingers as a player, and then you can string longer sections together and help you get through that progression. I played Giant Steps on my jazz broadcast a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't a train wreck, but I was barely keeping up. I wasn't even keeping up, to be honest. But I was barely hanging on, and it was a lot of fun, but I'd like to be able to play it. Not even confidently, just like competently. Not even confidently, but competently, just getting through the progression. That's a good goal for me. I mean, forget about being fluent in it and being able to really rip over it. I might get there, but just being able to get through it is something I aspire to do. So I took it off the list. I didn't play it this weekend, but I think 2 weeks ago I played it, and it's pretty funny to watch. But yeah, that's my time. So I'm Ryan with Love the Work. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Artist, Favorite Album and Artist. And make sure you follow us on Spotify. We have a lot of great new music coming out in 2023. I'm so excited to share with you guys. And so you can also support us directly on our Spotify. There's a button, fan support. If you like what we're doing, you can support our mission. Thank you so much. Have a good day.